Good morning, everyone. Hello, and a very warm welcome to all the attendees of this webinar. And first of all, I would like to thank you for taking some precious time out from this lazy Saturday morning. So we really appreciate it. First of all, I would like to begin this webinar by introducing about myself. I am Manoj Farke, working in financial hospital for the last 2.5 years. I represent the corporate team and work as a corporate relationship manager. Now, also let me introduce a brief about Financial Hospital. Now, Financial Hospital is a fee-based advisory firm, and we offer services in relation to financial domain since the year 2004. So we have successfully serviced each and every client, whether it may be from India or abroad, be it in financial planning, tax advisory, investment planning in equity, debt, or any other alternate category. So we are there to cater to your needs. Plus, our team is also backed by very strong research skills, latest economic trends, and we are always there to ready and serve our investor queries or needs, any if they might have. And also, a professional team comprises of CAs, MBAs, CFPs, and other technocrats as well who have rich experience and have thorough knowledge of the markets. So they have also shown some strong leadership skills as well. And I would now like to introduce our honorable guest speaker, Ms. Meeta Shetty, who is the fund manager at Tata AMC. Now, Ms. Meeta, Ms. Meeta Shetty, she has with over 12 years of industry experience. She's the fund manager of Tata Digital India Fund and in Tata India Pharma and Healthcare Fund. She's also been part of the fund management team since November 2018. Meeta joined Tata Asset Management Limited in March 2017 as a research analyst, which she has been tracking IT, pharma, and telecom sector and reporting to the Chief Investment Officer, Equities. And her previous endeavors include services with Kotak Securities Limited, HDFC Securities, Asian Market Securities, and the Lal Brocha Stockbroking and Karvi Stockbroking. As well as her qualification goes, Meeta is a CFA chartered holder from CFA Institute, US, and a bachelor in economics. So I will be now handing over the reins across to Ms. Meeta. The webinar would be divided into two halves. One half where Ms. Meeta Shetty would take you all through the presentation, to the topics of the discussion, post which she'll be glad to take any questions that you might have about the webinar related to the topics of the webinar. I now hand over the reins across to Ms. Meeta Shetty.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out and giving us this opportunity. So thank you, Mukesh. As he has already highlighted that I will be running you through some of my thoughts around the pharma sector, and we will be, I'll also take some whatever questions you might have. So I have a short presentation on the broad sector to start off with, and I'll likely to run you through those slides. So just give me a minute. I just start sharing that with you all. You'll have to bear a minute with me so that okay. Okay, so I think the presentation is visible on the screen. Am I good to go? Okay. So just to start off with, before I run through the screen or the slides, very importantly, there are two important key markets for the Indian pharma companies. First being the domestic sector, which is, we call it as domestic formulation market or the Indian pharma market. Now that market is extremely important in terms of the the growth, or in terms of the penetration, in terms of the profitability. So if I just look at that market as to how that market has performed over the last, say, a decade or so, you will see that this market has been always growing in terms of double digits, bearing 1 or 2 years in between. but the growth rate has always been healthy over the last few years. Even if I go back beyond these data points and go back in 2000 or beyond 2000, the growth rates were extremely healthy. And the growth rates are always divided between three buckets. So one is the volume growth driver, one is the value growth driver, and the last one is the new products which are introduced into the market. And if I see, we have been seeing a consistent, contribution from all. There are certain seasonality factors because of which volume sometimes fluctuates, but we have seen healthy growth across three buckets of this, sub-segments of this growth, if I have to divide. Now, what leads of consistent growth? One is obviously the kind of population that we have and the penetration, which we are still kind of getting better and better day by day. Plus, it's also the factor of the lifestyle which we go through, because the kind of sedentary lifestyles most of the metros have, obviously that is leading to a lot more issue in terms of the health. We are the diabetes capital of the world. We have largest number of diabetes patients in India today. We have far more patients of cardiac and health related ailments as well. And to improvise the longevity of those patients or those people who carry these kind of ailments, it's very important for them to have these medicines. And otherwise also, if you look at the life longevity in Indian context, it has been improving. And thanks to this penetration, which is getting better with time, we are seeing that the growth rate has been pretty in terms of numbers. If I would say pretty in terms of the double digit or more than double digit kind of number. So if you look at the disease burden wise, we have 20% of the disease burden as far as if I see the overall population of the globe. But in terms of the pharma penetration, we are fairly small. It's a very small number right now in terms of the overall global context. So that tells you that this growth rate, even going ahead for next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as I see, I think will play a very important role. In fact, this is one of the sectors which I think should do well over the next multiple years to come. One important thing also one has to remember when you talk about pharma is that the Indian pharma market is branded in nature. So we call it a branded generic market. So we don't have the newly launched kind of innovative molecules coming out from the Indian companies, but most of the Indian companies launch, which has been already there into the globe. Many companies globally have, kind of got them to market, and we kind of launch it. But we don't launch only the generic brand. We launch and we brand it. So it's called a branded generic market. Now, this branded nature of the market makes it a very sticky market or brands. For example, if I have to say, if there is a brand called paracetamol, then Crocin or something will have a very strong recall because they have been converted into a very strong recall brand. So the branded nature also gives a lot of stickiness to the companies who have managed to create brands into certain segments. And that also helps a lot in the continuity of the business. This is specific to the companies which are good in brand creation. So this is apart from what the US market is. So I'll come later to the US market, but that's how we are different. And this is also one of the reasons why it also makes the pharma sector a quasi-consumer kind of play, because there are brands, there is higher penetration, and there is a growth. So some bit of consumer kind of a story can also be seen, which I think is also getting played over the last multiple years, and we should continue at least next foreseeable future that I see. So the market depends on the growth again. To just point out that there were only 2 years where we saw the growth numbers which were in terms of below double digit. One was FY14, which was because we implemented the pricing. We had a major change in the pricing policy, pricing control. So the DPCO, which we call as, they generally control the prices of the medicine, and that was implemented, and there was a reset which happened on the MRPs, and that's what led to this. FY18 was obviously the GST rollout, and because a lot of had to be flushed out, and the inventory buildup happened over the following years, and all that obviously created a lot of disturbance into the market. But bearing that, if you see, the numbers have been around double digit, and bearing the seasonality which comes in between for months in between. That's the broad view on the domestic market. That it's a fast growing market in terms of growth. It's around double digit. It's a branded nature, and which makes the brands very sticky. It gives companies a lot of stickiness in terms of the revenue. Because of the branded nature, it also has a decent profitability, and over the next whatever years to come, at least for the foreseeable future, I think that this is how the market structure will look like. It means so we don't have many threats. So there are a lot of talks which is happening on the generic side, but I think that we have a long way to go before we actually foresee that kind of structural change into the sector. Because I think that we need to work a lot more on the compliance side and ensure that every tablet manufactured at no matter what plant has to be of the equal efficacy and the bioequivalence, which I think we have to do a lot of work on the ground. And I, at least, foreseeable future doesn't show that that's likely. So that's the broad domestic market. One more important thing before I move on to the export market is, today, if I look at all the large companies in the pharma space, be it Lupin or Sun or whichever, broadly, I mean, I can't put them very pointedly, but broadly, every company has about 1/3 revenue contribution coming from this market. So the rest is all the export and the multiple other segments, small segments that they may have. But almost around 30-35% comes from this domestic pharma market. And that's the revenue contribution. But if I look at the PAT contribution, this market is very significant. So a large part of profits, somewhere between 50 to 70%, comes from this market. So that tells you that the profitability is higher than what you see on the console levels, and whatever valuations and whatever price that you are seeing on the on the screen right now for these stocks, a large part of value is attributed to the domestic formulations market. Moving on to the export market. Okay. Now, India has played a very important role as far as the pharmaceutical exports is concerned. So there are two buckets of exports. There is API and there is formulation. API is anything which goes into the medicine, the chemicals, and formulation is any end medicine, which can be tablet, injectable, patches, creams, whatever. So the API segment is something that we have not been at the forefront, but formulation is something that we have done global pharma market is concerned. Even in terms of value, we are reaching there. But obviously, because of the prices that we manufacture at and the prices that we are able to offer to them are significantly lower. So the volume share is far higher. The value share is obviously not that great, but that tells you that we have the capability to manufacture almost all the key important, and we are able to take larger shares as days go and years go. If I have to see overall, the number for FY20 should look somewhere in upwards of $20 billion or so. This was the data which is the last updated by the government. So this is what I put up here. But that's also a growing market. And if I have to see the where these exports go, so 1/3 of the share nearly goes to North America, and then it is spread across multiple countries. I will not touch upon the other countries because that are very fragmented markets, but we can take it into the Q&A if there is any specific question to any market. I largely talk about the North America market. Now, of the overall export, nearly about $8 to $10 million goes to the North America market. Now, if you look at the North America market in terms of the size, we roughly the North America market is closer to about $350 to $400 billion market, and that's the innovator plus the generic both. You have to only look at the disease, that is somewhere around $60 to $65 billion. and we contribute to that market, the generic piece, which is 60 to 65. That's the go-to market for us. Of that 60 to 65 size of market, we are around $8 to $10 billion worth of supplies to them. So we are fairly significant in terms of the uh, overall, if you see North America market, we started looking at the market somewhere around 2005-6, very start off with, so there was a few companies like Ranbaxy, Dr. Reddy who started going to the market, started filing for ANDAs, started challenging the patents there. And since then, it has been a very, very important market for India. But uh, 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 if you remember, I just told you in my previous slide that domestic market, the overall contribution to top line versus the overall contribution to bottom line is there's an anomaly, and PAT is a far larger contributor to PAT from domestic. This was not the case around 2010 to 2015. If I go back and give you some glimpse, 2010 was the starting era of the golden period for pharma sector. So because Ranbaxy and Dr. Reddy were the first ones to start off, and they got some really good, launches, and profitability is driven by those exclusive launches. There were almost all companies started looking at US very aggressively, and it was around 2010 the golden era started, because by then most of the companies had already made filings. It was already 2 3 years old filings. They were starting to see approvals, and that kind of started picking up pace as years went. And the US market was growing very, very significantly for almost all the companies who were targeting that market. The growth was sometimes in excess of 30, 35, 40%. And profitability in few exclusive launches was as high as 80 to 90%. Even on the generic launches, we were able to get a very decent profitability. So obviously that market was growing, profits were growing even faster, and it was one of the best periods that Indian pharma companies saw in terms of the growth. And we obviously saw the prices also run up a lot. We saw the valuations touching very, very significant. So that was the case, obviously. But there were 2 3 structural changes that happened in 2015, which led to the slide of the overall US optimism. Quickly, just touching upon those. One was the structural change in the buyers. So as I said, that US generic market is not branded in nature. They write prescriptions, but the prescription has the name of the chemical and not a brand. So the power to decide which company's drug goes into the hands of the chemist and not the doctor. So the pharmacist or the chemist trained there are very strong, because they drive which company's medicine will a patient be given. So in 2015, or before 2015, I would say, there were almost 10 odd such large entities which were there in the market, and market shares were around between 10 to 15 for the larger players and smaller for the smaller players. But around that time, around 2015-16, there was a lot of consolidation which happened, and from 10 large players, it went down to about large players, and they were controlling almost 90% of the market. That changed a lot of pricing scenario for US. The pricing power got more stronger, and the manufacturers were obviously facing that brunt. So there were a lot of price cuts that we saw. That was one change. Second change was that US FDA started more ANDAs, because they had a large backlog before 2015, and they wanted to ensure that the backlog gets cleared with time. And they started working on it very, very aggressively. And there were multiple ways what led to that. They expanded the team. They started charging companies for ANDAs and plants, so that gave them some source of income, which expanded the team even further. And all that worked really well. And from just about 30 ANDAs per month, which they were approving around 2015, the number went up to almost 100 ANDAs per month. So almost 3x kind of jump that was seen. That obviously got more companies to the market. So if you were a company and you had filed for a product, and you would assume that there will be 5 generic players into the market and you will be competing with them, the scenario just changed, because FDA was giving more approvals. So from 5, it went to sometimes even 20, 25, 10, 15 companies. So then you were competing with a lot more companies. Parallelly, you had the pressure from the the pharmacist, because there was a consolidation there as well. So all that led to pricing pressure. So these were the two structural pricing pressure led changes. So if I look at the generic market, US generic market, uh, it used to be inflationary in nature uh, because there were some shortages or some companies were not able to launch. This was all before 2015. But after 2015, it started getting deflationary, and there was almost 15 to 20% kind of price erosion every year also that we have seen. Uh, that obviously led to a lot of pressure. Third was the compliance issue. So USFD obviously realized that we were getting far more important in terms of the size that we were uh, for volume as well as for value, and they started approving more. They started inspecting more and more frequently. Obviously, we our own challenging times, and I think that new, because this is an event which will happen and which will keep on happening. But companies are also kind of having curve. Uh, that's how it has been. Some companies are able to do it well. Some are still kind of on that learning curve. But that's something that will keep happening, and I think that should go on in future as well. So coming back to so that structural change, these three particular things led to the revenues market. From 2015 to 2019, if I have to see, there's a drop of almost 25% in the US revenue for most of the companies. Profitability was hit even more because obviously there was pricing pressure, there was a lot, and so there was a fall in revenue, and there was even a stronger or a sharper fall in the profitability, and that's why that change happened, and that's why domestic started contributing far more significantly to the PAT versus what it contributes to the top line. So that's how we stand right now. Going ahead, I think that we we really feel that we are at a point where things start looking better as we go into the future, uh, particularly from time. Because let's look at those issues again, which led to the structural changes and which led to the fall on the revenues. First was the consolidation on the channel side. So that obviously still remains. But what has happened is because obviously the requirement and the volume that they need is far, far bigger and higher, and there are some penalties attached to supply. Even the pharmacists have realized that they need to rely on much larger basket product companies, much larger companies, so that they are able to, supply in time and honor the whatever requirements are lined up, because the inventory has to be there, and at least 3 to 4 months of inventory is what they want at any point of time. So that is easing a bit of pricing pressure, not fully though, but some bit of easing I think is surely visible. Second is obviously the competition or the AND approvals, which were far more higher. So even FDA has realized that they need to prioritize more on those products where they need to ensure that where there is only one or two competitors, they need to prioritize those ANDA filings and not keep giving 20, 25 companies approval for the same product. So some bit of rationalization I think we can expect from there as well. So in fact, if you look at the deflationary curve which I talked about, that curve is already starting to see some benefit of this, and we have seen that the deflation which was in double digits, mid-teens to double digits, has now started trending lower, and it's somewhere close to single digit to mid-single digit overall for the market. So that curve is already starting to see some green shoots, and I think that that may not turn inflationary again, but even this some bit of improvement should play well for the companies. So those issues I think start to see some green light. Coming to the compliance side, I think that again, as I said again, that event risk, and companies have gone through the learning curve. It will go on for years to come. It's not that only Indian companies go through this. Every practical company listed, I mean, which has US FDA approved plants, has to go through this cycle. Only one thing which I can point out here is that companies have started filing for their very important key products which they expect approval for from two plants to just mitigate that risk. Not everybody, but in some cases we have seen some bit of those filings coming from two plants. So there, I think some mitigation on risk is visible. That's the broad sense on the US market. Before I go to this broad drivers of what benefits India and why the outlook is good, I drop happened, and whatever profitability impact and the last 5 years that we saw impacted the balance sheets and of these companies to some extent. And the cash-rich balance sheets, which they were, say, around 2015 and before, actually started turning net debt. And because of some acquisitions for some companies, some capex is planned, and obviously lower cash flows coming from the US. Uh, that is starting to look better because US has got a little marginalized in terms of the contribution or the growth that it was seeing, and eventually that curve has bent more towards, got skewed towards the domestic, and that is giving a steady cash flow. With US stabilizing from here on, at least we see that those 25% drop in revenues over the last 4 5 years, that at least that drops have stopped. We will see some bit of benefit on the upside in terms of the marginal growth or at least steady revenues. So that also will start contributing to the cash flows overall. And we see that those balance sheets which had turned net debt will start to see going net cash in a year to next 2 years from now. So I think one or two companies go net cash. In fact, in FY20, they have went net cash in FY20 itself, and from 21, 22, we'll see most of the larger ones at least starting to look much better in terms of their cash flows and in terms of the balance sheet. So that's I think one more reason why we think that they will start looking far better. Even on the valuation side, if I look at, we are not still at that level of what we saw in the past, and we have come up a bit because obviously the rally has happened, but we have a long way to go. If I have to give you a context, in 2015, the Nifty Pharma benchmark at about 14,000 odd levels. It fell to as much low as 7,000 levels, and it had been in the range of 7 to 8,000 over the last 1 year, 1 to 2 years, I believe. But we have seen that bouncing back to 9,000 plus recently. So yes, we have seen some bit of rally, but do we think that it is done and dusted? I don't think so, because we are coming out of a large 4 years, 5 years kind of bad phase in terms of growth and profitability, largely because of the US. And I think next, if things are looking fine, I think that there's a good possibility that we should see some more upsides there if these assumptions play. So just broadly on the what summing up, what are the growth drivers for us? Obviously, on supply side, we have the cost advantage, we have the manpower, and that is the reason why we've been able to capture a large part of the global formulation supplies. In terms of the USFDA also, we have, despite all the warning letters and all the noise that we keep hearing in the rhetorics, we have close to one-fourth of the overall USFDA approved plants in India. So despite all the noise, we need to see that we are a large supplier. We have huge number of USFDA approved plants in India, and we continue to supply despite all these noises. And the US also continues to give approvals to us year after year, and we are almost 40 to 50% rather of all the NDAs that are approved every year. So Indian companies are almost 50% of that. So obviously we stand very important. We have a very important place in terms of the supplies. Demand side, obviously, as I said, it's a domestic story. We are getting a good penetration. We are seeing lifestyle changes, and for us to live longer lives, we have to depend on these pharmaceutical drugs. We are having better diagnostic penetration. We are seeing that improving as we go, and that also is a way to, I think, point out that we will see that growth continuing. Policy-wise, obviously, government has been trying to do a lot of things, and we have seen as Ayushman Bharat is concerned or Jan Aushadhi is concerned. In fact, as recently, the government has also is ready to provide incentive for API manufacturing plants to revive that sector. I think that is also one interesting thing which can play over the next few years, because we have not been able to showcase so much on the API front. but given the kind of penetration we have on formulation, we can definitely capture that market as well. Uh, on the advantage side, obviously cost is one thing where we obviously stand to benefit a lot. We also have, as I said, government is trying to improve the policy support. We have the economic drivers, and even the companies are willing to invest on the R&D side, which we have been doing over the last many years, and I think that will continue overall as well. Uh, this is on the broader penetration, how we are. So this also, I'll also highlight on the healthcare side now that I'm on this slide. Bearing the pharma sector, there's also an interesting side to the overall healthcare and pharma healthcare side where hospitals and diagnostic comes into play. So if you look at the infrastructure or look at the beds per 10,000 people, we are way too low right now. And with improving per capita, we definitely will see that this will also go up. Companies are also very well looking at how they can improvise their penetration if they are going capex light. So forget about the overall, but even company specific, if I were to see, most companies were earlier perceived as high capex kind of players, but most companies are now started going asset light. They want to ensure that they provide a larger asset turn to the same asset and improve their ROCs. So the broader picture looks good holistically, but even company specific, I think, is starting to look far better now. So that's, I think, broadly there. I think we'll take more on the Q&A side if there is any specific question on health or in pharma. I would just like to on the COVID-19. There's a lot of excitement on that part. I think that yes, we've been reading one or two drugs names in the papers and on the whatever from the U.S. President or for the matter even companies. But I even if one manages to get through it and some drugs does well, like we're hearing the already existing drugs, I'm not sure whether one should. Get very excited about it because we still have to see whether the trials also support that kind of noise which is getting made right now. So let the trials come out and only then one can point out because there are multiple views and stories around it. So we'll see how it goes. Even if one or two companies stand to benefit, I think that US FDA or even the global governments will ensure that there is not only one or two companies which are manufacturing that, they will ensure there are multiple companies, 5, 10, 20, because then there is a lot of demand into the market. Practically entire population of the globe will want to, will be administered that drug or vaccine or whatever. So that will be very fragmented. Even on the pricing, this being a very sensitive issue, I'm not sure how it will play out. So it's also the need of the hour that companies provide that at whatever best price that they can. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not sure whether one, two specific companies will gain or. But one definite structural change I think which can on the API side because when China started seeing a lot of issues and they have shut down ports in Hubei, which is a good part of the pharma manufacturing hub, most countries got very concerned on the API supplies because the dependency is pretty high. For India, it's 70%. For US also, I think it's around same. So globally, large part of the API supplies are coming from China right now, and some de-risking on that front is getting talked about. I think that plays well. We can have a good line share in the API exports as well. I think even the government has realized it, and that's why those incentive schemes have been announced. So that is one structural change which can play over the next years to come. So I think that's from my side, and I'm happy to take questions. Okay. I think I can see the questions. Let me see. Okay, there are quite a few. I'll just quickly glance through that. Would COVID-19 be any reason for the sector's growth in India over the long-term horizon? I think I've already said that over the longer horizon, I think the API is something that can, play well because we don't have any significant presence. Plus, our dependency itself is very high there. So that is one thing which can get played over the next few years. Formulations we are already higher contributor in China. I think there we don't have much room, but API I think we have a large headway as we go. Best valued stocks. So I'm sorry, I can't comment on stock specifics, but I think that overall, if you look at the valuations, we are still at about around 10 to 11 times EV EBITDA roughly for the sector, and with about a decent outlook on the growth, I think it's very well placed. Okay. Healthcare sector, as I said, it's also looking good because hospital penetrations are also increasing, and infrastructure-wise, we need to grow. Company specific also are trying to see how they can go asset light and improvise their ROCs, because that's one sector where ROC is not, perceived to be very high for these. But I think that is something will change as we go. Okay. Now government is regulating the price of most medicines. Don't you think it affects the margins of the company? So government, it's not that now government is regulating the prices. The regulation has always been in place. The regulation of 1974 used to have pricing control on the API side. It's just that we changed from the API to the formulation around 2010 and odd, and then we started controlling the prices of the absolute medicines on the MRP based pricing formula. But price control was always there. There is a WHO list of the essential medicines, and we try to take cue from that, and then we keep adding and removing drugs from that list. But yes, price control has always been there, and it's only when there is a reset that particular year sees some impact. But overall, otherwise, we bounce back to a growth of double digits. So no, I don't think that it should affect the larger on the margins of the company. Bearing if one company has some large product which suddenly gets into the pricing, that will very company specific. But for the sector, I don't think so. What is your take on the huge dependence of China? I think I've already covered that. We should see that de-risking might play. Okay. Uh, okay. Can you brief on top pharma companies' balance sheet and profitability current scenario? I think I've covered that. I think balance sheet obviously will start seeing some improvement because at least that's what looks like given the assumptions that the street is working with. Mm. So there's a question on two key sectors. One is the medical equipment, and one is medical equipment. Uh, Largely is exported into India. Don't have any companies, especially in the listed space, that is a prominent player into this. So yeah, that limits our possibility to invest into those companies, at least for now, because we still need to have some companies getting bigger in size and becoming prominent. Do you think it is right time to invest in the pharma stock? I think with a horizon of at least next 2 to 3 years, I think yes, it looks good. At least should do well. I think the sector is coming out from a large 4 5 years kind of a lull period, and at least improvement on the US and the domestic points out that overall it looks good for the next several years. Domestic definitely poised to be good. US may have its cyclicality, but at this point of time, I think things are well poised. Very interesting question is India is heavily dependent on export on the US, with Make in US on the books over a period of time. If US decides to uh, produce more on domestic, is what I think the question is. Very good question. I think recently also there was a lot of talk on this. There was in fact the committee from the US president coming up and saying that we need to manufacture more. But I think that, see, we are fairly large in terms of the volume that we provide to them. Every third tablet in the US today is made in India there. So obviously we have a very, very prominent presence. And if you would have noticed, even in whatever reports have come, I think they want to more focus on very, very critical drugs, large volume, and the price that we offer to them. I think we should have a prominent place despite this. Plus, see, it also is in favor of U.S. government to have a low price producing nation like us, because there it's largely an inward market. There's Medicare, Medicare, which are all government entities, and a large part of insurance bill is pocketed by government. So it makes a lot of business sense for them also to have a supplier like India, which lowers their bills. So I think that we will have a prominent presence despite some bit of effort, even if they're trying to make. I think it will be for very, very critical drugs. But de-risking is also something will play. So they will have try to de-risk for someone from, say, from China. If 70%, I think some de-risking can come from there. That will also be on the opposite side benefit us to some extent on the APIs front. Compared to larger companies, how you see smaller companies benefit? I think that small companies also will benefit, because when you say smaller, even smaller companies, at least in the listed space, have somewhere between 20 to 30 ANDAs, and we have seen that in fact they have done far better in the last 2-3 years on the US than the larger ones, because larger ones had reached to a very heavy base, close to $1 billion plus, and that so one of the smaller ones have, despite all the challenges that I pointed out, the smaller ones still manage to continue to do well. Specific question on companies, I'm not taking. My apologies, because I can't comment on company specific questions. So there's a question. Pharma industry in India has not been able to attract much attention from government before COVID, but do you think now government will pay attention, and what would be fund allocation to government? And uh, so I think yes, infrastructure on healthcare side and spend on the R&D and pharma is something that not only India but most government will want to now focus more on. And we anyways have been a far smaller contributor to. So at the central level, we are just about 1.5 or so, and states put together, we are just about 3.5. So yes, we will see some bit of focus on that. But given all the economics in place right now, I'm not sure how much headroom we have for that. But I think that that will be something that will be really worth. Government will definitely want to take a relook at that. Do you think aftermath of the virus will make consumer more health conscious worldwide? How will that help the Indian pharma companies? I think yes. I think there will be two changes. One is we'll become more hygienic in our day-to-day lives than we were in the past. It's not that we were not, but whatever we were will become far more specific in terms of hygiene, and that will actually improve the overall infection rates, and the gastro infections and all that we used to see. So that will actually benefit the health wise far better. So it will be beneficial for the consumers more. If for companies, how will it benefit is that aware of the vitamins and the vitamin and nutrition supplements. That's how I think companies will try to benefit from that piece of the market, because once we become more conscious on health and hygiene, we'll also look at those supplements, because in India we still don't have that culture. I think that will start playing out over the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, what's your advice on as an investor how much exposure I should take into my portfolio for pharma and healthcare? So see, I would say that sectoral funds are always cyclical. Although pharma has a steady domestic piece, but cyclicality in the US did affect the sector over the last 5 years. So for that matter, any sectoral funds will always have that cyclicality. So one should have a small portion of their funds into the sectoral funds. Depending on your risk appetite, that number can swing a little up and up down. But I would advise that a portion is advisable, not a very large portion, because you will have this cyclicality. And please ensure that whenever you are investing in equity, the horizon has to be beyond 3 years. The longer it is, better, because equity markets are generally volatile, and a short investment horizon will not be advisable. View on precautionary pharma businesses like on labs companies. Can you just rewrite that a little? I'm not able to figure out what the question is. I think it's from Ritesh. Yeah. Can you just, Ritesh, write that again, because I'm not able to figure exactly are you asking. Benefit from them. So I think small manufacturers have been there. In fact, India has a very uh, uh, large manufacturing setup as far as the pharma industry goes. Somewhere the number goes to around 40,000 or plus, if I'm not mistaken. So we already have a very large base as far as the small manufacturing is concerned. And the recent incentive schemes which are getting offered to anyone who is willing to spend on API, I think those all things will benefit the small manufacturers. Okay, any basic principle to allocate towards these sectors? As I said, a small portion, depending on your risk, that can swing a little up and down, but sectoral funds are cyclical in nature, so you will have to keep that in mind. Repetitive questions I'm not taking, which is almost on the same lines, and nor the company specific questions. Do you see more greenfield investments coming in India? I think that is a fair possibility, not only for pharma, for even say electronic manufacturing or many other where the dependency is high. Right now, I think plus the tax incentives which we have offered, from for the new manufacturing plants which has happened almost 6 8 months back. I think that also is a big incentive for companies to come up and set up. And now the DD scheme, if that works, I think that will add up and accelerate that kind of investment into India. Okay, as you said about APIs, can you elaborate which categories? See, I think 70% dependency is huge. So across categories that companies will have to set up plans if we want to take some market share into the global export market. In pharma fund, while you invest, P ratio is important. I think that we look at multiple things. P, of course, EV EBITDA. We look at many other ratios, price to book. It's a combination. We try to see where there is value comfort also and the growth comfort also. We try to play around that. How government is helping and promoting API manufacturing? Obviously, they are providing incentives. Companies are willing to park 500 crore or so. There's some 10,000 crore kind of which they are prepared, and they will incentivize those companies via some benefits on the tax and stuff. Majority of the pharma healthcare funds have close to 50% exposure to small and mid-cap companies. What's the reason for the same? I think I'm not sure about other funds, but yes, we also have something similar. So depending on where we find growth and where we find value, the exposure is around broadly around that. If you look at our fund, a year back, we were heavy on MNC pharma companies, which was almost 20% of the fund. Now we are nearly half of that, and we have moved towards the US generic names. So I think those changes will have broadly on where we see, or at least as a team we see, I'm not sure about the other pharma funds, but where I would see the benefits visible. What- Okay, opportunities and threats for companies mainly dealing in non-prescription pharma, everything COVID-19 vaccine become non-prescription mode. Non-prescription meaning if you're talking about companies, whichever we can go and buy without prescription. I think in India we still don't follow very strictly that prescription policy, bearing for few drugs. So if you can rephrase your question, I think I'm not too sure. Okay, which sector would grow the most post COVID-19? I'm not sure which sector will grow the most, but I'm sure there are some buckets of which sectors can do well and will not. Obviously, the non-discretionary spends will continue to remain buoyant. Obviously, healthcare is one of the non-discretionary, consumer is one of those. I think that that's a broader one. I think power or utility, those sectors will fall into that. But the ones which will be or can take time to come back is obviously the travel and the hotel. There will be NBFCs or unsecured lenders. I think that will take some more time probably. Uh, yeah, I think broadly those are the buckets which are very clearly visible right now. Yeah. There are times when macros look good on the basis of statistics, but how do we gauge the probability of drug approvals of the from the US FDA, since this is what will drive profitability of the individual companies? Yeah, good question. Broadly, it looks good. Individuals should be very stock specific, and that's why our research team generally are always crunching and going through the data on the ANDA side and product specific statistics. But yeah, that is very well possible, and some companies. So if you look at the last year, in the larger names, only Dr. Reddy was one of the names which did well because obviously they were well placed on both sides, India and the US. So yes, then it gets to company specific, and I believe that is why we keep seeing the exposures uh, change depending on how we see that outlook and profitability moving in future. Any mergers and acquisitions expected? Difficult to say. I think the probability is low. We can probably see some brands getting acquired or companies getting acquired in the Indian context, but I don't think that there'll be far too many of them because, as I said, companies had seen their balance sheets going debt heavy, and now everyone's focusing on improving and becoming more leaner. So I think they'll be very careful. I would be very surprised if we see some very large acquisitions. India, yes, we can expect some, but I don't think any US ones, larger ones especially, will be seen. So even the recent one, which was announced between Aurobindo and Sandoz, has been pulled off the market. But yeah, most of the companies will be very, very focused on improving balance sheets, and I don't think they will want to go ahead with larger acquisitions at this point. Testing is increasing, so how lab companies will benefit? Will it be only short term or will this trend continue for basic test? So testing is increasing, yes, but the cost of the test is pretty high right now. It's almost 4,500. So it's not that everyone's not allowed to test. Only symptomatic patients are right now allowed to test because of the limited availability of the kits. So I'm not sure if that will benefit the company because on the flip side, the regular business has obviously got impacted at this point because of the lockdown. And the trade-off is right now not very exciting for these lab companies. Will it continue for longer term? It may because depends on until we have a proper medicine or a vaccine. I think it can, But I think eventually, if the prices come down, then it may become a more larger volume play. But on the other side, the regular business also has to get on its feet. Otherwise, the companies will not. Yes, there's Dr. P.S. Rao is asking me, what do you advise IPO for small pharma companies? Um, Difficult to comment, Mr. Rao, right now because I am not foreseeing. There are few names which have been in the market for a very long time, but they've not hit markets, like someone like an Intas Pharma or so. But difficult to comment at this point. During your investment in pharma fund, what points do you select? As I said, it's a very broad lot of thoughts that go into it. Plus, it's also a very focused company specific detailing that we do. But one thing underlying everything is we'll try to look at growth at reasonable price. So we try to have a balance on the growth as well as on the valuation front. So we try to see if we are not overpaying, and we also see some visibility on growth. So we try to get it to those kind of levels. Okay. Again, a question on valuations, whether the EV EBITDA from current. So, uh, yeah, it's because we something might look very exciting on one of that, so we have to see that the company look for future. Obviously, how I go through it. Okay, there is one question which is non-pharma, but I'll take that. This is from Lavish. So, hi, Lavish. I understand that. Okay, so he wants to know about the pharma or digital Tata Digital India Fund. So, I think that see that digital is basically investing into tech companies. So, I think that we will have probably a U-shaped kind of recovery, not a very V shape, because I think that US is a large market for the tech companies, and the way the US companies and the way the unemployment data is coming, the way the bankruptcies are getting talked into various forums. I think that companies will try to rationalize their spends on IT. But yes, over the next 1 to 2 years, realize that how the lifestyle is changed. We all are working from home. Collaboration tools are at our helps, and we are we are going more digital. I think that even at plant level, at malls, at shops, at stores, you will see a lot more automation happening in future. And in near term, because the profit revenue will leak, there will be some rationalized expense. So that is why I think the very near term can be a challenge, but probably it gives you an opportunity to, broaden this increasing digitization, which we will see and which will get far more accelerated because of COVID for the next 2 to 3 years. Okay, R&D is not that much strong in India. I think generally focused on the innovation. There are a few smaller ones, but we are largely our strength is on manufacturing, and I think we'll be able to bank on it pretty well. I think there will be a time when we'll probably have far stronger skills on R&D as well. But right now, at least we have been tried to bank on the manufacturing part of our positive. Okay, how do I see the overall market performance? Overall market, there is obviously uncertainty, at least in the near term, and hence we might have some bouts of volatility. But even if you go back in the history, say GFC or even the previous drops that we've seen, these other times when you actually see that for investing and the returns over the next 2 3 years have at least shown that they're pretty promising. Even if at the valuation front of the overall Nifty or say benchmark, you see we are closer to about a mid-teens kind of number right now, and I would say that it looks good. Even if I were to see uh, the premium that we have over the MSCI Emerging Market Index, because that is one parameter also which we kind of always keep in mind. So this premium, because we are a fast-growing economy, we always trade at a premium to the overall markets, even emerging markets. And right, if you look at that line, we at 40 to 50 premium, we have even higher in between in some bouts. Right now, we are closer to 20% or so. So that tells you that we are relatively well placed as far as the other emerging markets are also concerned. And even in absolute, as I said, we are closer to mid-teens kind of valuation right now on the P front. How do you foresee e-healthcare market for India? I think that's picking up pace, and it will get better and better. But right now, the pace is the base is very very small. So, but yeah, that's picking pace for companies, so online pharmacies or or those things. But it's very small right now. Okay, as Franklin case happened, a credit risk of companies looming now. What's your view on the debt front? Actually, I won't be able to put much light. All I can say is that yes, those things have really got a lot of to this kind of credit funds. But at least for us, we can say that we first of all we don't have credit fund, and even in our debt funds across, our holdings are generally towards AAA and plus, so we are relatively well placed. Okay, lifestyle leads to many diseases like diabetes and others, but now post COVID, uh, okay, so that's a large one, big one actually. Okay, so what this gentleman Ritesh is trying to ask is, will I because I would say lesser number of infections, lesser number of gastric issues. Gastro is a big market in India because we eat the roadside stuff, and those things get us some bit of discomfort. But I'm not sure because it's related. Plus, we are not working out. We are not hitting gyms. We are not as much physically. I'm not sure. At some point lockdowns will get over and we'll be back to our work life. So, but I think what COVID can change is less number of acute related ailments. Acute is anything which where you take medicines for a week or 10 days. I think that part can see some impact, but not the lifestyle one. So there is one question which says value strategy. What is the turnover of company? Can you just rephrase that again because I'm not sure what exactly you're trying to ask. Okay. Do you see any major inclusions of blockchain tech being implemented in pharma companies, either on spending side or the operation side? Mm, no, I've not heard much on the blockchain. I've heard a lot on the improvisation and automation on the plant side, but not yet heard much on the blockchain side. So I think we'll have to see how we can or how the companies can adapt to that and improve. But right now, not heard anything on that. I think I don't have any questions. If anybody wants to ask or rephrase some questions which I've not been able to understand, please rephrase them. Or if I have missed some, please post that again because I'm just glancing through them, so just keep that in mind. Okay. I think I think covered almost all of it. If there are any more questions, you can always reach out to Manish, and Manish can flag that off to me. So thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Meeta. On behalf of Financial Hospital and all the attendees, first of all, I would like to thank you for your insightful thoughts. And we are really grateful for your time and effort and the time that you took to share your thoughts and knowledge with this presentation. So, your comments were really helpful, and your talk seemed to provide so much needed help in this point of time. Thanks once again for this truly memorable morning, and we hope that you can join us again in the future. And last but not least, do download the Minty app for all the questions related to tax and finance. We do have certified tax experts and financial planners to cater to all your questions. So please provide us an opportunity to serve you digitally. And the recording of this webinar will be available on Minty app as well. So do download the app as well. On behalf of Financial Hospital, would like to thank once again to all the attendees and Ms. Meeta Shetty. Have a wonderful day and wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.